I believe that we're called to be a plumb line of truth in a generation that's gone evil. And I believe that there's a lot of evil infiltrating our education system and in the media and different places. There's evil. And what does the world need? The world needs light. The world needs love. It needs truth. And so for us as the church, we need to draw a line in the sand and say, no, not on our watch.
The Edmonton church slapped with $80,000 in lockdown fines and 6 charges of obstruction has been completely exonerated. Church in the Vine and Pastor Tracy Fortin were both convicted with 3 counts each of obstruction under the Public Health Act. The church and the pastor were also levied an $80,000 fine for refusing to allow inspectors into the church while church services were in progress to check for COVID compliance. Health inspectors and police had repeatedly entered the church during services until Tracy and her husband Rodney, also a pastor, said enough is enough. So Tracy started catching the inspectors at the door and politely turning them away, telling them to come back for inspections at another time when church services weren't in progress. All this made Tracy public enemy number 1 in former Premier Jason Kenney's COVID state of Alberta. Church in the Vine and Tracy's battle with the Alberta government were both documented in our movie, Church Under Fire, Canada's War on Christianity. You can see that at churchunderfire.com. But those convictions were just overturned on appeal, thanks to your generous donations to their ongoing legal battle at savepastortracy.com. Those donations went to the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund's Fight the Fines Project, which hired Tracy and Rodney and the church, an incredible legal team that has been with them since the very beginning of their battle with the Alberta government. So this righteous vindication of this incredible church and this wonderful pastor was made possible by you at home. So let me personally thank you. Now let's hear from the pastors.
Pastor Tracy and Pastor Rodney, we're right back on the couch where it all began. It was New Year's Eve, 2020 is when I found out about your church making a stand, and I knew I had to come and tell your story to make sure it was told properly. And we've followed you through this entire journey where you were making a stand for your congregation. Then it became a stand for freedom. You were making a stand for all Albertans, for all Canadians, against a government when the government misaligned itself with the laws of God. But you won. And you knew, Tracy, you knew from the very beginning you would win.
We won. And we've kind of facetiously said that all the way through, that we win. We win, because when you have truth and righteousness on your side, you win, even if the governing bodies of the world don't acknowledge it. But the vindication that we've now received from the courts, it is pretty sweet.
Rodney, this has been a long journey, not just for your congregation, but for your family. I mean, Tracy was charged with obstruction. How does it feel for this to sort of be in the rearview mirror?
Well, for starters, I've been kind of all along really upset at the fact that they decided to charge her as well as our church, because she was acting on behalf of our congregation and on behalf of our leadership team for this. So for me, it should have been separate from the beginning. So as a husband, I was always very frustrated at the fact that they took out their frustrations on my wife. And so to see her vindicated in this as well, it's a huge deal for us to see the charges dropped, or the acquittal. That we've been acquitted of all charges, which is great, because this is an amazing lady that I have beside me, and we're really blessed to have walked through this, and I guess it's a happy day, put it that way.
What has the impact been on the congregation? Because while I think it was probably quite emotionally draining to deal with the government knocking at the door, the congregation has rallied around you, but also grown.
Oh my goodness, the growth has been astounding, and the support has been absolutely incredible. We've told them, our church family, so many times that we literally could feel them holding up our arms as we stood at the forefront to fight for them. Yes, for everybody else too, for, Albertans and Canadians. But for our body, we really did feel them. We couldn't have done it. We wouldn't have wanted to do it without them so solidly behind us. We're so grateful. We love them.
Yeah, this was a win. This was a win not only for us, but for our church and for everybody that stood behind us, for sure.
And it wasn't just your church congregation that stood behind you. Through the Democracy Fund, which covered your legal costs, there were thousands of Canadians donating to help you fight the government, because the government has limitless resources. They have all of our money to fight you. And, the Democracy Fund hired you a really great lawyer in James Kitchen, who was able to really fight like a lion for you guys.
Yeah. Oh, we're so grateful for the Democracy Fund. I mean, and for Canadians that said, this is not only their fight, but this is our fight, because that's what they did. They took on the fight themselves with their finances, with their backing. So we just applaud you guys, because a win for us is a win for you guys. Like, I mean, man, we had all the resources behind us to do what we needed to do. I mean, this wasn't a cheap venture to go up against the government in this way, to stand. Most organizations would have probably had to fold, but we didn't, because we had strong support from viewers and from contributors to fight the fines. So
absolutely, and not even just the faith community. Some of the phone calls, the emails, the donations that came in from people who said, I don't even hardly believe in God. I don't go to church anywhere, but I feel so strongly for what you guys are doing and how you're standing for me, that I'm compelled to help support it.
Mm-hmm. They're family. We've got family. I mean, the Freedom Camp is like family to us. I mean, we've rallied together, and we continue to do that. I mean, there's amazing things happening and changes across the country because of what the family has done to stick together. It's quite phenomenal, really.
There's been quite a bit of talk about the division, and there has been a lot of division. COVID, no, not COVID. The government's reaction and response and overreaction and overreach has created so much painful division. Oh, the stories that we hear, families literally 3 years at odds with each other, people dying alone, people in hospital having procedures with nobody there. The division has been unbelievable, heartbreaking, devastating. But the silver lining in all of this is the family network that we experienced. Amazing.
I saw what happened to the Christian churches during COVID as not just an overreach by the government, but also persecution of the Christians. You are right across the street from the Costco, and the Costco parking lot was full when yours had to be empty. I don't think the persecution of Christians has subsided. I think it's moving elsewhere. What do you think about that, Rod?
Well, I think the discrimination was definitely evident. I mean, when you can have a church service where you're limited to a third of the capacity, and you see a grocery store full across the street with no hindrance at all, because it's a big box store and they have a lot of money, that doesn't make any sense to me. And, when they tell you that to have a funeral, you're allowed 20 plus the officiant, or if you had a wedding, you can have 10 plus the officiant. I sometimes wondered what kind of logic was behind this sort of discrimination. If you had a deceased person, you could have 10 more people. It just actually absolutely made no sense. And that's the logic that was going into this. And I'm thinking this is really the logic that's behind those that lead our province. And I think there's something really wrong with this. I think we need some better advisors in the future. And I just really want to encourage better counsel in the future for those that are in leadership in our province.
I want to ask you about the $80,000 fine that the church was levied. What happens with that? Do you get it back, or do you have to apply to get it back? Should you get it back with interest? What happens there?
Well, I think it should come back with interest. I think that's the least they can do. We still have to talk to James Kitchen on this and to see how that's going to work, how it's all going to play out. But we are fully expecting recompense, that those monies will come back, and we're trusting that it'll come back in short order.
Now, what do you think the next battle will be for Christians here in Canada?
Well, I think right now, I think a lot of us have our eyes on SOGI, or SOGI, I forget how to pronounce that. It's the sexual orientation, gender identity. You know what? And the sexualization of our children. I think that's every parent's fight right now. Honestly, we've been talking about this a little bit. I just spoke at a march there going back, the 1 million march. Got a chance to speak at that. And, I'm not looking for another fight. I'm not looking for a fight. But the fact is our children need to be defended. And so we need to stand up for our children. And somebody has to speak for them. They're a voice. They don't speak for themselves. Somebody has to stand up and say something. And if you see something, you say something. And what we have is a school system that's no longer educating our children with English and math and doing things that they're supposed to do. But what they've done is they've turned the education system into ideology training. And I just think that this is so wrong. And so for the church to stand up and say, you know what, we need to begin to be a voice and actually stand up and speak to this. And I think that's our next fight.
We can't take this lying down. There is absolutely an agenda for our children. And parents and grandparents and even just adults, if they knew what was in those books, they would be livid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's disgusting.
And can I say this also? I think as a church, I know that we're not called to take on a political spirit. That's not what we're after here. And I think that we can engage what's happening in our communities and speak. I believe that we're called to be a plumb line of truth in a generation that's gone evil. And I believe that there's a lot of evil infiltrating our education system and in the media and different places. There's evil. And what does the world need? The world needs light. The world needs love. It needs truth. And so for us as the church, we need to draw a line in the sand and say, no, not on our watch. We need to be a plumb line of truth and continue to be a voice, a beacon of hope and truth to our nation. And hopefully in that, without taking on the political spirit and becoming political, because that's not what this is about. This is about speaking for the children and speaking for truth. And so, I would encourage churches not to grab onto a political spirit. That's not what this is about. This is about actually being a voice for the voiceless. And that's what we're doing. And so, it's good. Stand up and be counted. When we have these rallies, let's get as much support out there as possible so that we can, it's not about standing with necessarily with this community or that community or becoming part of that community. It's about being a voice. So I'd encourage everybody to stand up in this next round. Let's make our voice heard. If the kids are important to you, then speak up.
Now, Tracy, this is your chance. You can speak directly to the thousands of Canadians who stood with you, who cheered with you, who paid close attention to your legal battles, who donated to cover your legal costs. This is your chance to send them a message.
Thank you is just inadequate. It is just inadequate. But for the reward received here on earth, it is small in comparison to the reward, the eternal reward for those that have sowed into fighting for truth and for righteousness. Thank you. From the very, very bottom of our hearts, over and over and over. Thank you.
To learn more about Pastor Tracy and Pastor Rodney and Church in the Vine's fight with the Alberta government, it's detailed in our documentary, Church Under Fire, Canada's War on Christianity, available at churchunderfire.com.